This has been the worst experience of my life. Isn't that how we all feel after a breakup? I mean, come on, breakups really suck. Well, today I'm going to talk about how to get over a narcissist ex. If you've spent any amount of time on YouTube searching for stuff about breakups and your ex, you've probably come across something that talks about narcissists. Chances are, after reading some of the stuff, you were like, this sounds a little bit like my ex, and you probably started to freak out a little bit when you realized, like, whoa, this is my ex. When it comes to this topic of narcissism, narcissists, and narcissistic personality disorder, though, I want to use some caution. It's common and it's normal after a breakup to see things in black and white terms, to have black and white thinking, and black and white thinking is not rational thinking. It's common and normal when we're in the middle of stress, but it's not the best way to look at things. I mean, I did it after my breakup. I think everybody pretty much does it, because when you're in pain, it's really hard to look at things in a comprehensive way. It's really hard to see the gradient in between the black and white. And so it's really easy to see your ex as a narcissist, but I want to remind everybody here that we are not therapists, including myself. We cannot diagnose somebody. We have not sat down and heard their personal side of things and really had the tools and the knowledge to diagnose, to decide that somebody is a narcissist. However, I do not want to invalidate anybody's experience, and it's certainly possible that your ex is a narcissist, or at least has traits of narcissist. Since we are talking about narcissists, I want to remind everybody that in the ICD-11, which was just released recently, they are taking the names of personality disorders out entirely. So narcissistic personality disorder doesn't even exist anymore according to the ICD-11, and I'm hoping that the DSM will eventually follow suit, because I don't find that these labels are really that helpful. Alright, so bear with me. I know you're probably in a lot of pain if you've been looking up this stuff and you're trying to understand what's going on, and you just want some relief from it, and I get that. I was there too. So why don't we take a minute and talk about what narcissism is and how it could have affected you in your relationship, and why it may be hard during the breakup to get over. When it comes to narcissism, we're really talking about two personality traits, and they fall under the antagonistic domain of personality traits. Now, just to make it like super simple, the personality traits are grandiosity and attention seeking. Grandiosity basically being that you put yourself above other people, that you always look down on other people, and attention seeking being what it sounds like, that you always want people to be paying attention to you, and you probably don't have that much room to pay attention to other people. So if you were in a relationship with somebody who at the very least was narcissistic, doesn't mean that they had a full-blown personality disorder, then they probably used a lot of attention in the relationship, and probably when you tried to get attention from them, they didn't have the power within them, they didn't have the resources within them to be able to pay attention to you. And so the relationship probably slanted mostly in their side. When you brought up concerns, you probably weren't heard about your concerns. You know, all the love and everything was expected for them, and when you requested love, that was like a demand to them. It felt like it was too much, and it felt like you were trying to maybe get one over on them, or you weren't paying enough attention to them. Basically, for you, it felt like there was no relationship. It felt like you were just doing all the giving. And I want to bring this back to that antagonism part. Antagonism means that these personality traits pit you against somebody. So there's this like wall or this barrier, and it's always that the person has to be in control and has to be in power. I don't want to say always, but that's, you know, generally the feeling here. And usually when it comes to narcissism, it stems from a feeling of insecurity. It's the stem of having low self-esteem. You won't see that on the outside, but that's what's driving the behavior. But for you, it can become very exhausting, especially with that grandiosity, where they feel like they have to be above you, because you're never in control in this relationship. You never get a say in what you want. You always have to be giving, and that's exhausting. That's really tiring, to be in a relationship with somebody where your needs are never recognized and your needs just don't count and don't matter. You know, usually when we hear about narcissism, we kind of think of them as having a mask or being fake, and it may not be something that they're deliberately doing, but it can be that in the relationship they're always taking from you, but out in public it looks like they're always giving you attention, because they know that that's not probably the best way to present themselves, and maybe giving you attention actually gives them attention, because then they look like the good person and they look like the better person in the relationship. So it's a complicated dynamic. I don't really want to get into it that much, because really it doesn't matter. What matters is how you felt. If you want to get over a narcissist ex, you gotta not make yourself become like them. Remember, when it comes to self-esteem in these relationships, usually your self-esteem takes a hit, because you were always put down, you were always lower, less than, and your needs didn't matter. So after the relationship is over, we can go for this mad scramble to try to prove ourselves, to look for information that we were the one who was right and we were the good one and we were better than them. And ironically, we start to become narcissistic as a defense mechanism because of this. And really, we just get stuck in that same dynamic that we were in the relationship, where we're always trying to prove ourselves, we're always trying to get attention, and this is why it kind of becomes narcissistic ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a defense mechanism. It's our natural reaction to trying to understand what happened. But if you want to move on, if you want to continue past this breakup, you got to get yourself out of that pattern. One thing that can help, and I know that a lot of people have a hard time with this and they don't want to do this, and you don't have to do this, but one thing that can help is to have empathy for them. You know, a lot of times we hear that narcissists lack empathy. It's not true. They have an impaired sense of empathy. But we also start to lack empathy for them when we're in so much pain, and we don't see, like I said, we get into this black and white pattern. We don't see that maybe there's reasons for the way that they behave, and maybe the way that we're seeing things, we're seeing it from our perspective, but we're not understanding the motivations behind why they did things. And I'm not saying that the reasons why they did things excuse what they did, but it does help to explain maybe and help you to see that they weren't like some giant monster coming in to take over your life. They weren't deliberately manipulating you. And I know, yes, in some cases that may be true, but what I find is for most people, they're not even aware of why they're narcissistic. Really, most people who are narcissists, they're not so aware that their behavior hurts other people. They probably think other people think the same way that they do. And so if you can empathize with that, if you can empathize with that they are this way for a reason, it's usually because they're feeling defensive. It's usually because there's a lot going on inside that they're not showing you. That may help take some of that weight off your shoulders of having to try to figure it out, of having to be better than them. They have low self-esteem too. And really that's what this all comes down to, is self-esteem. And the reason why you may feel like you need to be better than them, or you need to attack them or find out all this information to protect yourself from them, is because you don't feel so great about yourself. That may be a hard pill to swallow, so I apologize if I'm saying it harshly, but I had to swallow that pill. I had to realize I felt really crappy about myself, and that relationship really tore down my self-esteem. And so really what helped me with my ex is to take the focus off of my ex. You know, I didn't have to take my focus off completely, but start to take the focus off. Start to look at myself. What could I improve? What could I just feel good about already about myself? What could I do to demonstrate that I feel good about myself? How could I accomplish things, small things? It didn't even have to be something big, and really recognize myself for it in the way that my ex never did. You don't have to forgive your ex, although I do think it's good if you can be able to do that. I do forgive my ex for a lot of things that he did to me, even though I don't excuse them. And I want to point that out here. Forgiveness does not mean that it's okay what happened. It just means that you've gotten to a point where you are confident enough in yourself, you've moved on, and you can see why it happened, and it's done now, it's over. So I can forgive my ex for things, and if you can get to that point, that would be great, but it's not something that you have to do. Remember, this is your experience of your breakup. You're not forced to do anything. What I do wish for you, though, is that you start to feel better about yourself and take the focus off of your ex and attacking your ex and trying to figure out your ex and protecting yourself from your ex and anybody who might become like your ex, and bring the focus back to yourself and start to see some positive things that are going on with you. And if you're taking the focus off yourself because breakups are painful, they're painful. That's normal. You gotta get through it. You gotta just experience it. I know it sucks. It sucks for everybody. You will live through it though. Okay, so I know it's cliche, but tell me something that you like about yourself. Leave that down below in the comments.